I get eager staring at a dozen mini PC listings, trying to decide if any of them are worth the cash, and you don't want to end up with a box that looks slick but just sits there gathering dust. You've probably already worried about things like, will it actually keep up with my CAD files, or will the fan be a constant hiss that drowns out my calls? The last thing you want is to spend a few $100s and then discover it can't handle the workloads you need for a day in the office or a freelance gig. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Lenovo ThinkStation P3 Ultra Gen 2 is Lenovo's answer to the growing demand for a workstation-class computer that fits on a bookshelf instead of a floor-standing tower. At first glance, the specs read like a mini monster, a 2.5 GHz Intel Core Ultra 92 ND Gen processor with 24 cores, 32 GB of DDR5 RAM, and a 1 TB SSD. Those numbers are impressive on paper, but let's break down what they actually mean when you plug this thing into a real-world workflow. If you spend most of your day in CAD, BIM, or 3D modeling software, the Core Ultra 9's many cores give you that buttery smooth multitasking feel you've been craving. I've seen engineers run multiple Revit models, a Photoshop session, and a couple of browser tabs with data sheets open, all without a noticeable lag. The 32 GB of DDR5 is a real game-changer here. It gives enough headroom for those large assemblies and high-resolution textures without the system swapping to the SSD and slowing down. For anyone who routinely works with files that tip the 2 GB mark, that extra memory is the difference between waiting minutes for a render to finish and having it finish in seconds. Now, let's talk about the physical footprint. The P3 Ultra is a small form-factor chassis that slides onto a desk edge or can be mounted behind a monitor with a VESA bracket. If you're sharing a cubicle or have a home office where desk space is at a premium, this is a breath of fresh air compared with a clunky tower that steals half the tabletop. The back panel packs a decent array of ports, 2 USB-C Thunderbolt 4 connections, 3 USB-A 3.2 ports, a full-size HDMI 2.1, a DisplayPort 1.4, gigabit Ethernet, and a headphone/mic combo. That means you can hook up two 4K monitors, a fast external SSD, and a wired network without needing a dongle hub, a common pain point with many other mini PCs. Thermals are where the conversation gets nuanced. A compact case means less surface area for heat to escape, and the P3 Ultra relies on a single high-speed fan to keep the Core Ultra 9 cool. Under light to moderate loads, think office apps, web browsing, or occasional rendering, the fan stays at a whisper, barely audible over a typical office hum. Push it into a sustained heavy load, like a long-running simulation in ANSYS, and the fan ramps up noticeably. It's not a scream, but you'll hear it. The temperature sensors report the CPU staying within its safe range, yet after an hour of continuous maxed-out processing, you may notice a mild throttling as the system tries to balance performance with acoustic comfort. If you're planning to run 12-hour render farms, a traditional tower with a more robust cooling solution might feel less stressful. Upgradability is another practical angle. The P3 Ultra gives you access to the M.22280 slot for storage upgrades, so swapping that 1 TB SSD for a larger NVMe drive down the line is straightforward. The two DDR5 DIMM slots are also reachable, meaning you could bump the RAM up to 64 GB if your workload expands. However, the space constraints mean you won't be able to add a dedicated graphics card. The integrated SE graphics are fine for 2D design work, video editing at 1080p, or light 3D viewport rendering, but they won't replace a discrete RTX card for high-end GPU-accelerated tasks. If your creative pipeline depends on GPU-intensive effects or you want to game at 4K, this mini PC will start to feel limited. Speaking of gaming, that's a clear line where the ThinkStation P3 Ultra draws the line. The hardware is tuned for professional productivity, not for framerate-hungry titles. You'll be able to run indie games or older titles at respectable settings, but anything that leans heavily on modern ray tracing will struggle. So, if you're looking for a single machine that can double as a gaming rig and a workstation, you might be better off with a